racing part 5. Let's get down to the brass tacks. How much it costs to build this RZR. So I think the easiest way to break this down is to talk about the vehicle used, the cost of the parts at MSRP value, and then the extra labor and fabrication involved. So starting off with the vehicle, I started off with the 2017 RZR Turbo. The only thing that I still used from the stock turbo were the engine, the transmission, differential front drive line, brakes, hubs, front bodywork, the stock Fox 2.5 and 3.0 internal bypass shocks, as well as the stock wiring harness. One little tip, so let's say you get a RZR 4 for $22,000. A lot of these parts that you're not going to use, you can sell and make a few $1,000s back. Ideally, maybe you can find a crashed RZR with a good motor and trans and driveline. That would probably be your best and most economical bet just to get what you need. So moving on to the chassis. The chassis was built by Fabworks, a small fabrication company in the Los Angeles area. The chassis was $12,500. So here are the photos of what it looked like when I picked it up. That includes taking a stock 4-seat frame rail, completing all the fabrication work needed for the roll cage, moving the seats, relocating the seats as well as the steering rack and all the body panels, as well as mounting up the stock front fender, hood, and side fenders. The fuel cell was already installed, and the radiator was supposed to have been installed, but there was an issue, so there was an upgraded radiator and we had to install that ourselves. The chassis came mounted for seats, but it did not come with any other mounting tabs other than for the 2 front lights in the front bumper. I sent Fabworks the lights I wanted to use in the front bumper, and they built the bumper accordingly. And Fabworks asked my opinions on what I wanted the chassis to look like. They have made multiple iterations of this chassis, and this chassis is about 5 inches lower than previous versions they had built just a few months sooner. So I love how it turned out. I love that it has a flat top. You know, the radius would have looked good as well, but they asked for my opinion on what I wanted for all of those things. For suspension, I went with the Lone Star Long Travel Kit, which also included their heavy-duty sway bar kit and their heavy-duty rear radius rod box. I started off with the Lone Star axles, which were set up with the stock CVs. I have recently upgraded to Rhino 2.0 Super ATV axles, as I broke a Lone Star axle pretty easy and just didn't have a good feeling about those being real race ready. So the chassis took a lot longer than anticipated for them to finish it. So as a gift, they threw in a Super ATV steering rack, which was $300 value. For the radiator, they also had an issue where they accidentally damaged the radiator that was in the car, so they upgraded me to the CBR, which is specially designed for a RZR with the integrated intercooler. That's $1,379, and that is the model 6079. For fuel cells, I've got a FuelSafe Enduro 25-gallon cell. This is about $1,530, as that includes a 45-degree filler neck, as well as a fuel gauge that we installed. The upgraded fuel rail was about $220. That's just peace of mind, and we didn't want to go with the stock fuel rail. Right away, before we installed the driveline, we upgraded to a Sandcraft carrier bearing, which is about $240. For the dash setup, we went with a UTV race pack, and we added a few sensors for oil pressure, boost pressure, and the belt temp. That's about $1,100 for all of those items. Moving on to suspension, like I said, I kept the stock Fox 2.5 inch front, 3.0 rear internal bypass, but I sent those off to Shock Therapy. Let them know it's for a race car build for a Lone Star Long Travel Kit. So for about $1,500, Shock Therapy resprung, revalved, and added crossover rings to those stock shocks. Those shocks are matched up to a Lone Star Long Travel Kit, which is about $5,500. That includes the bigger radius rod rear box cage, which is welded, as well as their heavy-duty sway bar kit. Moving on to the wheels, I went with Walker Evans 15 by 6 inch beadlock wheels. Those are about $1,100. And around those wheels are some ITP Ultracross R-Spec 32 inch tires. So about $750 for 5 of those. Moving on to the seats, the Sparco seats were about $1,900. And we ultimately had to add the bases, which required some cutting and welding from the fabricator. So now the Sparco seat bases allow us to simply unbolt them and move them around based on how tall or short the driver and passenger are. So moving on to the lighting. Up top I've got a 40-inch rigid adapt light bar. That's about $2,400, and this thing's putting out almost 30,000 raw lumens. Speaking of lumens, I've got 9,500 lumens each on the front bumper with some of the rigid D2 XL lights. The pair of lights in the front bumper is about $450. Moving back, you've got a full race jack. I chose the FOA screw jack. That's $350. For communications, we've got a PCI 50-watt radio and intercom setup. That's about $999. And for our fresh air setup, using the rugged N3 pumper setup, which I love their expandable hoses, that comes out to $411. On the bottom of the frame, I've got a Polaris HMW skid plate, which is $779. The Grant steering wheel with the quick release is $225. For GPS, I had an old iPad laying around. It's a Gen 1 iPad when I use the XGPS sensor. Altogether, I've got about $250 into that, along with the RAM mount where it screws right onto the dash. The chassis was recently coated in Steelit. That's about $250. We use just over a case, and I recommend if you're going to do that to a race chassis, buy a case and a half just to have a little bit extra. Like I mentioned earlier, I did upgrade recently to some Rhino 2.0 axles from Super ATV. Those are about $1,300, which includes a full-size spare, which is mounted in the rear of the race car. Now the motor is essentially stock, but we did upgrade the ECU mapping and clutch tuning with a local tuner. That was about $1,600. Now those are all the high points of all the parts that I used, but about $2,300 went to miscellaneous items for fabrication, fittings, other brackets, things that were needed to put everything in place. The chassis comes pretty bare, so you've kind of got to weld up what you need, where you need it, and go from there. This also includes some of the cost. This also includes the parts for the custom air intake as well as the custom removable storage rack that Brent at American Engineering built. And the final finishing piece is we got all the body panels powder coated, which was about $275, and then the whole car was wrapped, which was about $1,800 because it's got a little bit higher end reflective wrap on the company logo on the side of the car. So labor. You can obviously save a ton of money if you're capable to do all of this yourself, to fab, to wire. There's a lot of skill sets involved in putting this thing together and getting it dialed. If you were lucky enough to get somebody to build this for around $40 an hour. So Brent Mann at American Engineering has been skilled in off-road fabrication for over 30 years. It took about 150 hours of his time to do all the mounting, teardown and final prep, fabrication, wiring, and obviously we had a couple things we had to go back and double check as the car was running. For instance, where we located the radiator was in a great spot, but then that encroached on the filler for the fuel cell, which necessitated the need of a 45-degree angled filler hose. So a couple pieces that Brent had already fabbed that we had to go back and change. These type of things you don't really figure out until you get the whole car together. So all said and done, MSRP on all of these parts is just over $39,000. I was able to get certain deals on some of these items, bringing my cost down, thankfully. That does not include the initial cost of the razor, nor does that include the fabrication work, which, like I said, if you do a rough estimate, $40 an hour, if you're lucky, 150 hours, that's an additional $6,000 in labor. So things add up quick, and where we're at right now is, in my opinion, a car that is raceable. There are going to be some things we're going to need to think about upgrading in the future, like an alternator so I can run a night race and make sure I've got plenty of power to run lights for hours on end if we did a race like Vegas to Reno or the Baja 500. Probably going to spend some more money in the future with clutch tuning, maybe working more on a custom clutch cover off of a Turbo S or better air ducting if we can't keep our belt temps low. That remains to be seen. So far been pretty good, but we haven't really pushed it in a race situation. So I hope this gives you some ideas if you're thinking about going down the rabbit hole of building a race car yourself. Honestly, if I was to do it over and I just wanted to go racing, I'd probably find a used race car You're going to get a good deal on it. You're going to get somebody who's had a car that they've already learned the ins and outs and sorted out a lot of the bugs. If you watched our last video, we had a lot of bugs that needed sorting out. Some of these weren't that big of a deal. Some of them ended up being fairly expensive. These type of things led us to go over my budget. The tuner ended up costing me a lot more than I anticipated. The axles I initially thought would be okay were not. So these are just the type of elements everyone talks about when you do something you're going to go way over your budget. I went over mine, but it's off-road racing. So you're going to have a budget, you're going to go over it, be generous with that budget. You're going to learn a lot. I've learned a lot about this vehicle. I've learned a lot about how a RZR comes together, some of the challenges when you do go from just a regular store-built vehicle. Honestly, after building this race car, the charm of these stock side-by-sides is even higher for me. The fact of how reliable all the stock side-by-sides I've owned have been. You can get your warranty, how much of a beating they really take, I think is really, really impressive. So now that I've seen that, I see it on a whole other level, building a race car and having just a lot of little issues that have caused me to be stranded, caused, more money to come out of pocket. So I think this is one reason why these side-by-sides have slowly been killing the Sam car market. They've been killing the pre-runner market, because when you've gone down these rabbit holes like myself with a race car or a sand car or a pre-runner, these type of things happen. You're going to have issues, and there's a charm to just being able to go jump in these side-by-sides, fill them with gas, take care of them, do your prep, and you're going to be happy. You're going to have a lot of trouble-free miles. So yeah, you're going to spend more than you probably thought. You're going to have some trials and tribulations, but honestly, this has been a lifelong dream for me. I can't believe that I own this car. I'm so excited to go racing. As a youngster, I've always wanted to go desert racing. I love the idea of a driver and a co-rider, a team working together. We might be at the NORA race in 2020. I think that would be an amazing opportunity to get together with some friends and family and have a full experience all the way down the Baja Peninsula without it being a non-stop race. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to just tune the car. You're going to see a lot of videos coming up where we're tuning the suspension, playing with the lighting, all the other nuances of the car, and then it's going to be race time. So dream come true. Couldn't be more excited to really, really push this thing, and now it's time to put up or shut up. It's time for me to line up at a starting line and see how it goes, and learn about how to become a better driver where I'm not beating up the car, but I'm getting some good results. So it's going to be an exciting process. I've been playing in the dirt my whole life, but this is a whole new challenge, and stay tuned to our channel if you want to see how this car does at its first race coming up here pretty soon.